So you came here to talk about Gen AI, but maybe start by just telling me, like, where are we? I mean, what are these breakthroughs for maybe a slightly less, in the game audience?
Yeah, so AI obviously has been a exciting and fast-paced place of change over the past few years, which let's remember was not the case for the decade, let's say, prior to this. There was progress, but it wasn't tectonic shifts like we had recently. Uh, why are we here talking about this now? Really, it's because the scale that we finally gotten to did what everybody thought it might do, which is hockey stick up in capability
Oh
as
yeah.
as scale has increased. The other super intriguing thing that's happened that I think was maybe caught people off guard was that language in and of itself and all of the language that's out there and the ability to generate language and predict the next word ultimately in a string of words is enough to, at least to our eyes, look a lot like intelligence and generalize much, much better than people expected it would 2 years ago.
Well, I mean, you folks were obviously super early here. When you think about the way that things have actually taken off, I mean, sort of like it breaking into the popular imagination.
Mhm.
I mean, does that resonate at all with the way you thought there might be an AI breakthrough? Because breakthroughs are never incremental. It's kind of like step function change. But it's always hard to believe that when you're living through one.
Yeah, I think the area that it came in was fairly surprising. Again, that language aspect of this is really what caught people off guard a little bit. Now we were a fairly natural language processing heavy company
Mhm.
for years now, and we're focused in the insurance industry, which means lots of documents, lots of semi-structured, often unstructured, which means we've been very much in the business of applying where the cutting edge of natural language processing AI was for years. And what we see here is this this seismic shift, as you say, in terms of how that NLP is applied, and in terms of well, ultimately, of course, the scale again, we have to repeat that the scale is so different here, but
Mhm.
the actual way that these algorithms work under the hood, but also how they work in generating their outputs, it's a completely new paradigm. It's
Mhm.
also, and we can talk about some of this, much more challenging, I would say, from an engineering aspect, because we went from these natural language processing algorithms that spit out exactly the format of what you're expecting. They're
Mhm.
looking at grabbing named entities within a blob of text, and they're going to tell you exactly where the entity is, what type of entity it is, and it's very formulaic. The output that these GPT type algorithms are putting out are much more conversational by nature, because they're
Okay.
trained on, let's just say, the internet and
Yeah.
how the internet
Well,
might converse.
so I can think why something trained on the verbal activity on the internet or the words on the internet might be problematic in an enterprise context. So maybe we can talk a little bit about what that means for your business.
Yes. So I think the folks who have let's say put out some of the larger algorithms that we know about, the open AIs and the Google Bards of the world, probably recognize that unharnessed models are fairly dangerous. Microsoft learned that with a chatbot years ago that they put
Mhm.
out on Twitter, for instance. The interesting part of these solutions is that there's actually a decent amount of what they call uh, human reinforcement into
Mhm.
how these models output. And so I think two things here in terms of being trained on the internet. One is certainly it's trained on this massive corpus of data, and there's lots of nastiness in that corpus of data. And so these humans have added reinforcement in terms of how they want to see the outputs, what is a good output versus a bad output. And the algorithms are constrained in that sense. The other thing that maybe is a very positive idea here is that I think possibly in the aggregate, the world and the people who have generated the internet are not so bad in the aggregate.
There you go.
You could have a fairly nuanced conversation with these chat, AIs, and they will give you, the subtle points of arguing one side of an argument versus another. They're going to be diplomatic. They're not going to be angry Twitter trolls.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's a really positive sign for humanity, that if you dig deep enough, we're actually decent people.
That's nice to hear. And when you, so when you think about the way that this is enhanced, sort of, I think the term you're using is InsurGPT. What are you altering, and how is that changing the conversation with your partners?
So when you go from a foundational model, which is a generalized model that generates text, and then you think about applying it within an industry like we do in the insurance industry. So creating a system, really, not just an algorithm, but a system that we call InsurGPT. We're doing a few things there that matter. One is, we're going from generalized to specialized. Just like if you were taking a recent college grad who has generalized intelligence and now putting them within the insurance industry, you're going to provide them a vernacular, a logic that is, wholly specific to that industry, and in particular specific to their day, 9 to 5 within that office. They're going to think, act, behave differently than they would outside of that. And so that comes down to, again, things like the word catastrophe means something very different outside the office than it means inside the office. Inside the office, it has a very strict definition. Outside the office, if somebody says that they spilled a cup of coffee on their couch, that was a catastrophe, you'd say, yeah, of course it is. You're not going to say, no, actually doesn't quite cover the definition of catastrophe in the insurance industry, meaning a huge event, and many things happen. So we're adding context. We're also wrapping a system around the algorithms such that we're gaining certainty of the outputs. We're not just asking for the next word. We're really we're leveraging the generative AI, but then we're also checking for consistency. We're having that generative AI reflect on if it's a reasonable answer. And then we're also, of course, wrapping a sense of business understanding and process around our system so that there's certainty on the way out.
And is the system, what do you say, and maybe this is the wrong way to think about it, but this is a way to think about it. Are the sort of LLM breakthroughs, are they making your models more accurate so that you sort of can deflect more use cases from a human, or is it making the experience for the non-digital coworkers feel better? Is it like is this a customer experience improvement, or is this almost an accuracy improvement, or both?
Yeah, so primarily our customers are looking for work to be done sight unseen.
Okay.
And so we are not in the chatbot business.
Yeah.
And so primarily we're looking for two things. One is certainly accuracy. So there's accuracy improvement with leveraging these models, particularly on hard, difficult tasks, tasks that would be tough for to train up a 12-year-old. So find all the policy numbers within this email. A 12-year-old is going to say, I don't know what a policy number looks like in the first place. So, so it's understanding these things. We used to try to write, programming solutions to find these things. And it was very brittle. It was very particular. But the generative AI enables us to be much more broad in how we ask for this and still be accurate in the way back. The other piece that it's really unlocking for us is, I would call it like this degree of difficulty, where in the past, if the format, let's say, of input was going to be completely randomized, almost no system that's going to be developed is going to be prepared to handle such random data on the way in. But here we could take what is, to our eyes at least, a fairly general intelligence and be able to put it at somewhat randomized inputs, and able to train it in a domain like we do in insurance, and able to prepare it for what scenario it happens to be in, let's say claims intake, and then also explain very specifically what output looks good, what does success look like, and if we do all those things right, we're really going to enable ourselves to deal with a huge variety and variability of inputs, yet still come out with a pretty successful output at the end of the day.
Look, at the end of the day, when I think about when we first met you, it sounded like to us, what you were doing was kind of crazy. Like we're going to make these digital insurance workers and they're going to be human-like, but they're also going to be sight unseen. And we were like, well, why not? I mean, we're venture capitalists. Let's do it. Let's be crazy. I love it.
Sure. Yeah.
And I have to say now it really feels a lot more like you weren't crazy, but you and Chaz just saw the future.
We certainly imagined the future that we wanted, and it seems to be much more tangible day by day.
Excellent.
Yeah, and we, I don't think it's quite luck, right? But it's both the pressure of the business we're in, and I think just smart ways to solve things. We're already extremely focused in natural language. We were already thinking about how to automate full end-to-end processes, defining it only with language, because ultimately, if you or I can be trained using language, and the manager wants to instruct and teach with language, then we should really be prepared for a world that it can also define these processes, take in these processes with language. And it just so happens that over the past year or so, that interface, that capability has just 10x, and we are smiling, happy recipients, and now users and leveragers of the technology. And I also think that this is likely just the beginning, but we're excited to be kind of at the tip of the spear of things, of course.
Well, continue to imagine an insanely ambitious future and an insanely ambitious outcome.
We will, and we appreciate the partnerships along the way, and so much more to come from Roots Automation and InsurGPT and beyond.